Well, Lauren, we finally got there. It's our last episode of Series 1 of Moral Money.
Sad times indeed.
I know, isn't it?
The thing is, now I just see moral money problems everywhere I go. I'm just collecting a list and we're not going to have any place to talk about them anymore.
Well, I guess we'll just have to do Series 2.
Series 2, you heard it here first. I mean, just this morning, I was reminded that I get a free coffee from Pret, like at least twice a week.
I thought this was a myth because I have never once got a free coffee from Pret, but...
Smile and a wink, Sam. Smile and a wink. No, I don't wink, but I do smile. I am friendly, but there's one person who every time I seem to get him at the cashier, I get a free coffee. And
Does your husband know about this?
He will now.
So what's the dilemma? What are you worrying about? Take the free coffee, surely.
Well, that's what I have done. But should I say no? Should I say thank you? I insist on paying for the services and goods I'm receiving, or should I just say thanks with a wink and a smile?
Wink and run off, I reckon.
See ya. Hello and welcome to the final episode of the first series of Moral Money. If you hadn't picked up by now, it's the show where we rope in the best-known Telegraph writers to help readers in a pickle about how to spend their cash. I'm Lauren Davidson, the Telegraph's head of personal finance.
And I'm Sam Meadows, a personal finance reporter and Lauren's favourite employee.
No comment.
Over the series, we've heard from disgruntled flatmates, parents who think they're being fleeced by their children, and even one reader who was left in a strange situation after a one-night stand left a Rolex at her house.
Yeah, but no answer to my Pret dilemma. Oh yeah, anyway.
Our guest today is a man whose work has appeared on more Telegraph front pages than anyone else in this building. After 31 years here, our pocket cartoonist, Matt, has most definitely earned himself a spot in the Telegraph Hall of Fame.
He has indeed. Prince Philip called him a genius. Theresa May had one of his cartoons in her office in Downing Street, and in 2002 he was appointed an MBE. A colleague even once wrote about him that, like pop stars and Brazilian footballers, he goes by only one name.
Despite all of that, he says one of the most important things is always remembering to be silly. So we're hoping that he will bring some of that silliness to our series finale of Moral Money. We are delighted to be joined by the living legend that is our front page cartoonist, Matt.
Hello, thank you.
Hello, welcome to Moral Money.
Thank you very much.
So we've dug through the archives and we found, I mean, you draw cartoons on every subject under the sun.
I have covered most subjects, yes.
So we dug through and found a few that are kind of money orientated. So I'd like you to tell us the story behind them, or the stories.
Well, I think the first two I see you've got here are on house prices. And in my 31 years, I've seen house prices rocket upwards and then crash downwards, and probably go back up again. So it's one of those things that sort of I think readers care about. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows about.
Yeah, of course.
And it has over the years been quite dramatic. And the first one is an estate agent showing a couple of property with a for sale sign outside. And the estate agent saying, or if you want something more expensive, I can show you this again tomorrow. And that was, I think, that was one moment when I was trying to buy my first house. I think I probably did.
So there you had that in mind.
That was spiked
suddenly, everything.
Can you remember what was happening? It must have been house prices.
I think there was one of those changes in tax or something that everyone was racing to get it in by some deadline, and if you didn't make an offer that morning, it had gone. So this was something I obviously felt very keenly at the time. And then right after I bought, they crashed, which inspired the next cartoon, I think, which is there was a Mayfair property slump I have there, and a couple in the rain. Man trying to get a taxi and the woman saying, we'll never get a taxi, let's just buy one of these houses. And it's just one of, it was one of those things, I think, especially if you had bought, you felt,
house prices, something that people always connect with.
Absolutely. And I think it's, hopefully, Telegraph readers feel the same way.
Well, the listeners, I think they'll be fascinated to know kind of how you come up with ideas. So
it's my day is always exactly the same. I mean, the subjects change, but I start the day by writing all the possible subjects that I could do a joke on at the top of a very large piece of white paper. So for the last 3.5 years, it's been Brexit every single day. But under normal times, it would be house prices or financial crash or budget or all of the things we used to care about and think about.
With one story dominating the headlines for so long, do you find that you've now got sort of a back catalogue of ideas to use, or are you running dry on how can I possibly have another joke on Brexit?
The reason that it's Brexit isn't quite as awful for cartoonists as you might imagine is that it does every day move on a bit, so we started off with, will Article 50 ever be, whatever they do, passed? And then we've gone through all Theresa May's, catastrophic defeats, and then you had a leadership election. So actually, and now we're back to another, will there be another election? And so actually, the story does change. Although it's all Brexit, the story every day is moving on. So for me, that's great.
And I think you don't just do one cartoon each day.
I got into this habit of showing 6. And the idea is that if I show 6 around, and I have a few people, I take them around the office and I show them. And, you get an idea of which is everyone's favourite, and sometimes they're just too complicated or difficult to get, and other times, it's a tiny bit like a comedian trying something out. One you don't expect to get a good response.
Sometimes gets everyone's...
Exactly. Exactly.
I think what's brilliant about these cartoons, and I'm sure a lot of readers will agree, is obviously they're very specific to that day's news.
Yeah.
But when you look back at some of the old ones, you think, actually, that's just as relevant today. They've kind of got that long-lasting...
Well, that's the terrifying thing for me as well, because, a subject comes back, like house prices, and you think, I think I've done that before. I think I've done that. So it's, another joke about Christmas or another joke about, but I love the challenge, so it's great fun.
I'm looking at one here of a man on the train, on the phone to presumably his wife, and the caption says, "I'm on the train, sell the car and bring the money to the station." Do you remember the specific story behind that?
That must have been rail fares going up, and I've done, that's another subject. Well, it's an annual subject.
Yeah, exactly. So, start preparing now.
Exactly. So I must have... 31 years ago, I would have been doing jokes about that before people had mobile phones. It's sort of now I think, how can I slightly change it to what I haven't thought of before? Yes.
Well, that seems like a good point to jump into our first moral money question this week, which is also about the price of transport. The question, am I wrong to fly business and put my kids in economy? Matt, I know you've got 4 kids, so I'm interested to see what you have to say about this.
Have you ever done this?
Confession time. Let me just read out the letter, which comes from a reader, RC. We are booking a big family holiday to South Africa, and my husband and I want to treat ourselves to seats in business class. We can afford for our 2 children to fly business class too, but I don't think this is a good use of money. I was in my late 40s when I flew business for the first time. However, when I mentioned this in passing to a friend, she was shocked that we would make our children fly in a different section of the plane. Am I wrong to do so? Matt, what's your first impressions of that?
I think it's slightly... how old are the children? If they're 2 and 4 and you're leaving them with strangers saying, please could you feed my child? Change the video when they get bored and pick up a dummy. I think it is a bit immoral to pay for them to go business class. Really. I mean, I don't think children need to go business class. I thought maybe if they were really tiny children, the best way of doing it would to put the children in business class, where they'll be looked after by all the air hostesses.
And the parents sit in the back.
And the parents can go in the back.
Bit of peace and quiet.
Exactly. I don't think I'd pay for business class for my children, but it sort of depends on who you're inflicting your children on, really. I can be sure that if it had been my children, they would have been coming back and forth up to business class all the time, asking if they could watch your telly. So it
might defeat the object.
Yes, exactly. I don't think it would be. We stayed in a very swanky hotel recently, and people had brought their children, and the children were bored, and it seemed to ruin the parents' holiday at the same time. It's a very difficult thing when you've got you're trying to lead this sort of luxurious life, but keep your children at arm's length.
And perhaps the luxury is lost on the children a little bit.
Yes, exactly. And
they don't appreciate the spas.
It sort of depends how long the flight. Oh, to South Africa, so that's going to be quite
long,
isn't it? Yeah.
I always, when you get on the plane and you turn down the aisle and you have to walk through business, just to flaunt it in your face. I always think it's baffling when there are children sitting in there. I mean, not just because they have such tiny bums and such big seats, but I think, what? Why do they need to be sitting there? Why do they need that service, that luxury? I want to sit there.
I know people who have their nanny back in economy with the children, which is another. When I first saw this letter, I thought I didn't realise that both the parents were going to be up in business, because I thought one parent was going to get very much the short end.
Yes, I suppose
that could be a solution.
I suppose you could have one parent. You could have one seat in business and swap halfway.
Switch halfway.
Exactly. Yes, I'll have the champagne early on, and then we'll switch. And you could have
once the champagne's finished,
exactly.
You can take my place.
It is a tricky issue, though. It's not quite as simple as we're all making it out to be, because if you are the parent, you might think, I've worked really hard. This is my holiday too. I've got to spend the whole holiday looking after my kids. I actually would like a bit of peace and quiet, a little bit of a treat on the way. But then the question is, do you bring your kids up with you, or do you say, I will sacrifice that treat for myself and sit at the back with them?
Yes, maybe it's just my children, but flying with children, there's always an incident, isn't it? I remember my son, when he was very little, finishing his meal and then just folding his tray upwards so that all his unfinished food and drink fell through the floor. Or else they have dreadful earache, or they can't. So, there's sort of something unexpected always happens. And, I always rather like spending time with my children. I mean,
how radical.
It's sort
does come down to that, doesn't it?
Watch a film with them, or, it shouldn't actually ruin your
These parents seem desperate to get rid of their children. It feels a bit like...
Maybe they should just leave them behind.
And also, maybe I'm just very wet, but I would be feeling guilty in business, thinking what's happening back there that I don't know about.
Sure. I think you made a point. You're right that the age of the children is quite important, because if we're talking a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, I think, yes, probably you shouldn't be doing that. But if you're talking a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old, maybe actually they'd like to be somewhere else.
Mine are in their 20s now. Yeah. And I would fly business class, and they can get coaches there.
They can jog.
Yes. they can sort of hitch a lift down to South Africa.
Well, I've got quite a big family. There's 4 kids, 2 parents. There's 6 of us. So we didn't fly front and back, but whenever we went on family holidays, we would all check into different seats. And when we'd turn up, the person behind the desk would be like, "Oh, would you like seats together?" No. Because otherwise we're all arguing by the time we get off the plane. So you get a nice little in your seat, watch your own movie. Still friends by the time you start holiday.
Interesting. Yes, perfect. Much better idea.
Someone in the comments, because this, like all of our columns, they've been on the Telegraph website, and we've asked readers for their thoughts. And someone made a suggestion, which I hadn't even considered, that this could be a scam by the parents to book business class and then get there and hope that it's underbooked and plead that maybe our children can join us in business.
I've never managed an upgrade in my life.
No, I haven't either.
I don't know what everyone tells you different things about how you do it, but I've never managed
on a long haul flight once. I'd read that if you bought the flight attendants a box of chocolates and gave it to them, they'd give you an upgrade. So I did this. It's got
to be illegal, isn't it?
So I did this and handed it over, and I said, we've got a friend who's a flight attendant, and we know it's such a hard job, so perhaps you could consider an upgrade. No, perhaps you'd consider these chocolates as because we know how hard it is. And all they did was turn the adverts off on my TV.
Still, that's something. Although my grandparents once got an upgrade because when they turned up at the airport, the girl behind the check-in desk was called Lauren Davidson. And they said, granddaughter's called Lauren Davidson. Their name isn't Davidson, by the way. So they could have completely made it up and they got upgraded. I'm going to try that. I'm going on my honeymoon in February to Kenya and I've booked economy, obviously. Right. But I will gladly accept an upgrade if anyone's got any tips. Please
what airline are you flying with?
British Airways.
Ooh.
I think
other airlines are available.
Wedding dress, and they'll know it's a special day.
Matt, I can't get in anymore. But this is a thing that people do. Gordon Ramsay, Kirsty also, both of them had said, we fly business. Why shouldn't we? We've made money. Yes. I want to sit in comfort, but I want my kids to stay grounded. I don't want them to think they could just sit in business without having to work for it. So they happily split the family up. What
an excuse. I'm not sure I buy that.
Maybe not.
Oh, dear.
If you had to choose, Matt likes his children, so I don't know how...
I think I might like to spend the flight with them. Yeah. Yes, then I wouldn't be worried. I'm a terrible worrier, so if I wasn't with them, I'd be worrying about what are they up to.
So it wouldn't be that relaxing.
Or what's going on.
Yes, who are they annoying or who are they being annoyed by?
Well, as long as they're annoying someone else, that's fine, isn't it? Well, we did put this to readers, so we always put a poll in when this goes online on the Telegraph website. So Telegraph readers, 23% said that they would treat the children to business alongside us. Wow. 32%, so about a third, said we'd put the kids in economy and we'd happily sit in business. But the majority, which is 45%, said we would sit in economy with the children. So obviously after 31 years, Matt, you're in tune with Telegraph readers.
It's not quite as one-sided as I'd have thought, though. So still a third of people would just go for it.
Isn't it? I think they're the ones with the more annoying children.
I think the ages is crucial, isn't it? With my 20-year-olds, I'd definitely leave them.
There's one quite nice reader comment that I liked. Oscar Dish wrote on the Telegraph website, am I wrong to fly business and put the kids in economy? Of course not. Fly first and check the kids in with the luggage.
Hello there, Telegraph podcast listener. My name is Tom Gibbs and I'm the host of our Audio Football Club podcast. If your desire for top football chat isn't sated, then may I please recommend the Telegraph's very own podcast about that subject. Audio Football Club comes out every single Monday and it features some of the best and brightest football minds in the country, taking in all the biggest stories from the Premier League and around Europe. Search for Audio Football Club wherever you get your podcasts or follow the link in the description of this episode. Good things will happen to you if you do so.
So we're still with Matt, our front page cartoonist, and our second moral money dilemma today is about stay-at-home children. So, our daughter is just starting at university and has chosen to remain living at home for her first year. We think it's important for her to learn how to manage her own finances and so want to charge her rent at the market rate. She says this is unfair, especially as many of her friends' parents are paying for their rented accommodation in halls. So are we being unreasonable? This is what our listener would like to know.
Right. I wonder what they do in the holidays. Do they charge during the holidays or weekends? If I'm just visiting now, so can I have it free? I think it seems a shame to load your daughter up with all this debt, really. I would advise the daughter, if you're being charged market rates, live somewhere else. Yeah. You probably don't want your parents to know what time you're coming back
have a
from
bit more space
Freshers'
and freedom.
Week. Yeah. And 3 of mine are through the other side of university. And I think that, part of the education is you live away from home.
Yeah.
Sure.
You learn to hopefully pay your own gas bill and what day the bins need to be put out and everything. And I think it's part of I actually lived at home and regret it. I was at art school in London and my parents lived in London. So I stayed at home, but I think I missed out a huge amount. All my friends, stuff would happen in the evening that you wouldn't know about just because you weren't there. You had this cozy. I mean, it did mean I got a meal at the end of every day, which was lovely.
I presume you weren't charged rent.
No, they didn't. They were very kind. They were very, very kind. But it seems. I mean, the idea that she'd have to get a loan, I imagine,
to pay her parents' rent.
When I was at school, one of my friends was given a sort of increase in pocket money, but then he had to buy his packed lunch from his mother to sort of manage his finances. And I thought, well, don't buy it from her. Just go elsewhere. Teach her that, well, you've got to bring your prices down, Mum, or I'm going to, buy it. And
bring the prices down or up the quality.
Yes, and if they're charging her, maybe she could sue them, if something doesn't work,
Problems in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
There's black mould on the ceiling.
I think it's a very dangerous path they're going down here.
And I think also, I don't know about anyone else, but there's a bit of an irony. I mean, I got a student loan and I worked in holidays, but, my parents gave me an allowance each month to help because, it's expensive, university, and the student loan doesn't cover it all. So the irony here that you could be getting an allowance from your parents and paying it back to them in rent just seems ridiculous.
And the system factors that in. If you get a student loan or a maintenance loan, you get a smaller loan if you live with your parents. So the idea is you shouldn't be taking money from the state and funnel it through to your parents. They should be supporting you, contributing towards, whether that's giving you cash or saying, please benefit for free from the energy I've already paid for, And when my dad moved home after university, his mum charged him rent. But then when he went off on him, he got married at 23, so he wasn't around for very long. When he went off and got married, she gave it all back to him and she had saved it up for him. But when I moved back home, my parents tried this on me and I was like, but I already know. Yeah. I already know that it doesn't work if I know that you're just going to save it up on my behalf. I'll happily save it myself.
Yes.
Or not, as the case may be. But.
Our son has moved back and now amazingly got a job. And we're thinking of, do we charge him rent and make him put it in a savings account? Otherwise, he'll just spend it and be living with us for free. So we're thinking of doing that. Yes, which I think.
Does he know you're thinking of doing this, or will this be the first?
He does now.
When he hears this.
But I mean, for me, the sticking point is market rate.
Yes.
If you're going to pay market rate, why are you living with your parents?
Exactly.
I love my parents, but you want a bit of, especially that age, you're kind of chomping at the bit for independence, aren't you, and for life experiences. I think if the parents need to charge a bit of rent, maybe they do actually need a bit of help if they've got people living in the house that does cost more money.
Yeah.
Charge them below market rent or a token amount, or maybe they contribute to bills or they
food.
do the weekly food shop, something like that. That's sort of, we each benefit from this, but there's, if it's going to be market rent, why would you stay?
Exactly. Move somewhere else. Exactly.
I think particularly at the moment where young people are struggling so much to save up for a deposit to buy a first home. So quite a lot of young people are living with their parents. This boomerang generation of leaving for uni and then coming back to your parents. I did that. And similar to your daughter, I lived in a different country. I lived in the States. I haven't mentioned that for a while, have I? I lived in New York. But when I came back, I moved in with my parents for 2 years in my mid-20s while I was saving up to buy a flat. And again, they'd be like, where have you been? Who are you going out with tonight? When are you being back? And I was like, you didn't know I was dead in a ditch.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a political term now, isn't it? But you didn't know what I was doing for months on end in a foreign country, and it was fine.
I think there's a difference between a child at university and a child coming back after university with a job. I think with a job, perhaps there is an expectation that
if they're not
even
having to borrow money to pay you rent, I think
even if
that
it's
makes a difference.
Below market rate, so you are helping them save. I mean, perhaps then, do we think it's a little bit different?
I mean, our son went on a holiday and we lent him some money, and then he sort of thought he could come back and do jobs like take the rubbish out to pay us back. And I thought, well, I want you to do that anyway. I don't want to pay you to suddenly everything becomes a financial transaction. I'll brush my teeth, but only if you're paying. So it gets terribly confusing. You know?
Yeah, if your kids are grown up, you'd hope the relationship would be less transactional and more they want to be a sort of participating member of your household as an adult, as somebody who gets and gives.
Yes.
And then if you pay for a holiday, that's just a little bonus, isn't it?
That's right.
Well, a lot of the readers on this column the majority were against this idea of charging rent to stay-at-home children while at university. And one of the big reasons was that surely you want them to be spending as much time as possible on their degree. I mean, some students need to get a part-time job, but if they can afford not to get a part-time job, surely you want them to be working on their degree and putting all their effort into that. So that's an element as well. You know, this might push them to have to get a job, in which case they'll be spending less time studying and it's perhaps not do as well on their degree. So
and you have to wonder, maybe they'll switch it round when the parents are getting older. They'll say, well, you can come for Christmas and visit the grandchildren, but it's a busy time. It's, I'm going to have to charge you.
We've got a lot of bookings.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to have to charge you hotel rates for coming to visit the grandchildren at Christmas.
Yes.
Love it. Yes.
You reap what
I'll be
you sow.
storing that one up. Well, we did once again put this to Telegraph readers, and Matt, you'll be pleased to know you are in line with the majority of them yet again. 71%, which is quite a lot actually as these polls go, said no, saving on rent is the benefit of living at home. About a quarter said they would charge a reduced rate of rent. And just 6% said that they are no longer a child and should contribute. Glad they're not my parents.
Yeah. Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Huge pleasure.
As ever, we like to give you the last word. And here's what some of you had to say about last week's episode, when Associate Editor Camilla Tomini advised a reader who discovered that a one-night stand had left behind a Rolex but wouldn't return her calls.
I think the reader has done everything she can to contact this guy. It's been 6 months now, and if I were her, I would just leave it.
On the subject of the Rolex, I think Camilla Tomini was completely right. Seems really weird and fishy to meet a man at a corporate event who then doesn't care enough about his expensive watch to call you back. I think he's definitely married. She should sell it.
Well, we've reached a sorry state of affairs if people think it's okay to sleep around and also to thieve from people. How do people think it's all right to behave like this?
I don't think that a woman should be selling a Rolex, not until she's gone to every length possible to reunite it with her own. And I've got a Rolex, and there's absolutely no way I'd be giving that up if there was any way I could help it.
Well, thank you so much for making it this far. It is the end of the series.
We have reached the end, but fear not, Moral Money lives on with our weekly column posted on the Telegraph website. So do still get in touch with your conundrums, puzzles, questions, dilemmas and problems.
Do send us any feedback, thoughts or messages of love to moralmoney@telegraph.co.uk, and don't forget to share the show. Scream about it on the bus. Text your friends.
Yep, sing about it as you walk down the street. If you've enjoyed this podcast, leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes, which will help other people find us. And stay subscribed so you are the first to hear about any future episodes.
Our producer is Theodora Lilidis, and that's it from us.
Sam, it has been a pleasure working with you.
An odd way to tell me that I'm getting fired.